Tonight, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment, not just for Ukraine, but for the world. The stakes have never been higher, and the battle has never been more intense. Tonight, we are witnessing a remarkable shift. It is a moment of extraordinary courage, of unwavering resolve, and most importantly, of defiance against those who believe that power can be wielded with impunity. For months now, we've watched as Ukraine, under the leadership of President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, has stood firm in the face of Russian aggression. They have faced the might of one of the world's largest military forces, and yet they've endured against all odds. But just as they began to turn the tide, they have been confronted with another formidable challenge. And that challenge comes not from Russia, but from a former president of the United States. Donald Trump's recent comments were not just an attack on Ukraine's right to defend itself, but an affront to the very ideals that underpin democratic society. It's easy to forget, but the United States has long been a beacon of freedom and self-determination for countries all around the world. So, when Trump claimed that Ukraine's resistance was a losing cause, that its leaders were somehow incompetent, and that Russia should be allowed to have its way, he wasn't just speaking to his base. He was undermining the global order. He was threatening the democratic world. But what we saw tonight, what we saw just hours ago, is something extraordinary. President Zelenskyy once again stepped forward. He didn't just respond to Trump's remarks. He fired back, and he did so not with insults or rhetoric, but with clarity, with purpose, and with the weight of truth on his side. Zelenskyy's response was a remarkable moment, one that captured not just the essence of the struggle in Ukraine, but the essence of what we, as a global community, must stand for. He didn't get lost in petty insults or distractions. He didn't engage in a back and forth of political sparring or finger-pointing. Instead, he framed his words in terms that cut through the noise, in terms of the most basic and universal human rights. The right to exist, the right to defend one's home, one's family, one's future. When he stood firm and said, "Ukraine will never surrender," those words resonated far beyond the borders of his country. They struck at the heart of what it means to be human, to have agency over our own destiny. They were not just a declaration for Ukraine. They were a rallying cry for all of us, every person who believes in the fundamental right to freedom. He was not speaking for himself or for his government. He was speaking for every person, everywhere, who has ever dared to dream of a world free from tyranny. Zelenskyy's words cut through the rhetoric of appeasement. He didn't just reject a dangerous narrative. He reclaimed the moral high ground. In that single, decisive moment, he reminded us that this conflict is about more than borders and power struggles. It is about something deeper. It is about the very values we hold dear, the ideals we cling to in the face of chaos. It is about the choice between freedom and autocracy, democracy and dictatorship, the right to live in peace, and the suffocating grip of war. These are not abstract concepts. These are the stakes of this moment. And Zelenskyy understood that. He framed the debate not in terms of who has the most powerful military or the deepest pockets, but in terms of human dignity, human rights, and the future we are willing to fight for. When we look at the situation from that lens, it becomes clear that Ukraine's struggle is not isolated. It's not just a faraway conflict happening to people we may never meet. No, Ukraine's fight is our fight. It is the fight of anyone who has ever found themselves in a world where their freedom is at risk, where their rights are being trampled, where their future is uncertain. Ukraine's fight is a mirror of our own values, values we must continue to protect at all costs. And make no mistake, Zelenskyy's bold stand is not just a defense of Ukraine. It is a defense of us all. Every nation that has ever stood against the tide of oppression, every citizen who has ever raised their voice in the name of justice, is represented in those words. We will never accept anyone's attempts to take our freedom, to take our land, or to take our future. Those words echo beyond the borders of Ukraine because they speak to something universal, something deeply ingrained in the human spirit. The desire to be free, to have agency, to have a say in what happens next. This is why Zelensky's message matters so deeply. He is not just speaking to the people of Ukraine, he is speaking to the world. He is making a fundamental point about what kind of future we want to build. Do we want to live in a world where power is exercised without regard for human life, where might makes right? Or do we want to live in a world where the sovereignty of every nation, every person is respected and upheld? This is not just a matter for Ukraine alone. This is a matter for all of us who believe that democracy, the messy, beautiful, imperfect, but always striving, democracy is worth defending. By standing firm, by rejecting the narratives of surrender, Zelensky has done more than just reject a call for appeasement. He has turned the tables. He has reframed the debate in ways that are impossible to ignore. It is no longer just about whether or not Ukraine can survive this war. It is about whether we, as a world, are willing to stand for the values that unite us. It is about the choice between living in a world where bullies and autocrats get to dictate the rules, or living in a world where democracy and the dignity of all people matter. Zelensky's bold response wasn't just a political statement, it was a moral one. And in that moment, he reminded the world of something we must never forget, that the fight for freedom, for the right to live without fear of oppression, is not just a fight for one country, but a fight for the soul of humanity itself. Here's the thing: despite everything, despite the overwhelming odds stacked against them, despite the brutality and relentlessness of the Russian military, Ukraine is not just holding its ground, Ukraine is turning the tide. The narrative that Ukraine was doomed to fall, that they were too small, too weak, too isolated to stand up to the might of Russia, is being proven wrong. Day by day, Ukraine is gaining ground. But it's not just the battlefield that is shifting. There's a shift happening in the hearts and minds of people around the world. Because the truth is, this conflict is about more than tanks, missiles, and military strategy. There's something deeper at play here, something that can't be measured by body counts or artillery strikes. It's about a spirit, a will to fight, that refuses to be crushed no matter how fierce the opposition. The Ukrainian people are showing the world that they are not just defending their borders, they are defending an ideal of freedom, of self-determination, of democracy. They are fighting not just for their land, but for the very values that make us human. Think about the people who are standing up, day in and day out, in the face of horror. The farmers who, with nothing but their bare hands and their plows, have turned their fields into makeshift battlegrounds, repelling invaders who think that the land of Ukraine is theirs to take. The teachers who have become soldiers in classrooms, training the next generation of fighters with courage and conviction, even as their own lives hang in the balance. The doctors and nurses who continue to heal the wounded, to treat the sick, to save lives even as bombs fall around them and hospitals are destroyed. These are the true heroes of this story, the people who didn't wait for someone else to come to their aid, but instead said, "We will not surrender. We will not bend. We will fight for what is ours." And in doing so, they have inspired the world. It's important to remember that this is not a fight of equals. Ukraine is a small country faced with the full force of a massive, well-equipped military. And yet, despite everything, Ukraine has continued to resist. In fact, the reports we're hearing from the front lines are remarkable. Independent, credible reports are showing that Ukraine has made significant advances, particularly in the southern and eastern regions of the country. Ukrainian forces have retaken key villages and towns, pushing back the invaders who once thought their occupation was a done deal. They've reclaimed land that, just months ago, seemed impossible to imagine ever seeing free again. What does this tell us? It tells us that despite all the talk of Russian invincibility, Russia's occupation is not as strong as it first appeared. The truth is, Ukraine's fight has exposed the limits of Russia's military power, and those limits are growing clearer every day. Putin's expectations were never met. The so-called special military operation was supposed to be a quick, overwhelming force that would crush Ukraine's will to fight. It was supposed to be over in days, a lightning strike that would have Ukraine at its mercy. But here we are, months later, and Ukraine has not just survived, it has fought back. And the longer this war drags on, the more it becomes clear that Russia's objectives have failed. They've lost momentum, they've lost ground, and most importantly, they've lost the support of the world. It's easy to look at the size of the Russian military, to see the weapons, the firepower, and the numbers, and think that Ukraine has no chance. But what we are seeing now, what Ukraine is proving, is that there is something more powerful than sheer force. There is something more powerful than numbers or tanks. It is the will to fight for something greater than yourself. It's the belief that you can stand up against all odds and defend your country, your people, and your future. Ukraine is showing the world that even the most insurmountable challenges can be overcome with courage, with unity, and with an unwavering commitment to freedom. And make no mistake, this is a war of attrition. It's not just about one side winning battles or taking territory. It's about who can endure, who can outlast the other. And Ukraine is proving that it can endure. It is demonstrating that Russia, for all its power, is not invincible. The Russian military may have more weapons, but Ukraine has something far stronger. A nation united by the will to survive, to fight for freedom, and to protect its future. We are witnessing, right now, an incredible shift. It's not just about territory or weapons, it's about a people who refuse to accept that their story is over. Ukraine is rewriting the script. And with every victory, no matter how small, it is showing the world that even in the darkest of times, even when all hope seems lost, there is always the possibility of turning the tide. We need to take a step back for a moment, because right now, this moment in history is about something far bigger than one country, one conflict, or even one leader. What is happening in Ukraine right now has global implications. It is a test of the kind of world we want to live in, the values we want to uphold, and the future we want to build for ourselves and for future generations. We cannot afford to look at this through a narrow lens. This is not just a struggle for Ukraine's survival. This is a defining moment for democracy itself. In the face of an authoritarian regime that seeks to expand its control by force, we are witnessing the challenge to the very foundation of what it means to be free. And it's not just Russia on one side. We have to recognize the broader global picture, one in which there are forces not just seeking power, but actively eroding the democratic values that have been won over the last century. Think of the isolationist rhetoric coming from some of the world's most powerful figures, those who would rather turn their backs than stand up for what is right. This is not just a political contest, it is a moral one. When the people of Ukraine stand firm, when their president speaks not just for his nation, but for the future of freedom itself, it sends a message to the entire world. It says that democracy is worth fighting for, no matter the odds. That when tyranny rears its ugly head, we can't afford to look away. We can't afford to sit idly by, hoping someone else will act. Because if Ukraine prevails, if they push back this aggression and hold on to their sovereignty, they will show us all that we can still win, that we can defend what we hold dear, and that the international community, if it stands together, can face down the forces of oppression. But if we're being honest, we have to admit that this isn't just about Ukraine anymore. It's about the future of global democracy. It's about whether we live in a world where borders mean something, where the rights of nations and people to choose their own future are respected, or whether we live in a world where might makes right, where authoritarian regimes are free to act with impunity. That's the real question at the heart of this fight. And when certain voices in our world downplay the significance of this struggle, when they suggest that Ukraine's fight is not worth supporting, that it's just some faraway issue that doesn't concern us, they are underestimating the stakes. They are misunderstanding the gravity of what's happening here. Ukraine's fight isn't just about Ukraine. If Ukraine falls to Russia, if the world turns a blind eye to this aggression, the implications will echo across the globe. It will send a message to every authoritarian regime, from Beijing to Tehran. that the world will not stand up for the sovereignty of nations, that the international order can be bent and broken at will. And what comes next? The message will be clear if you can invade Ukraine without consequence. What's stopping you from invading Taiwan, the Baltics, Poland? Every nation that cherishes its freedom will be at risk. This is the truth that some refuse to see. And it's the truth that leaders like President Zelenskyy are courageously putting at the forefront of the global stage. His leadership is not just about securing Ukraine's future, it's about defending the principles we all hold dear. And when he stands before the world and demands support for his country, he's not just asking for military aid. He's asking us to recognize the kind of world we want to live in. Do we want to live in a world where authoritarianism flourishes unchecked, where countries can be invaded and oppressed with no repercussions? Or do we want to live in a world where democracy is valued, where the sovereignty of nations is sacred, where we stand together to protect one another in the face of tyranny? This fight, this moment, is bigger than Ukraine. It is about all of us. It is about the values that define us as a global community, values that transcend borders, that unite us in the shared belief that every nation, every people, has the right to choose its own destiny. And when we ignore that, when we dismiss Ukraine's fight as someone else's problem, we risk losing the very ideals that bind us together. Ukraine is showing us, with every inch of ground gained, with every victory in the face of overwhelming odds, that democracy is worth fighting for. But we too must fight for it, by standing with Ukraine, by standing with every nation that refuses to let its freedom be taken, by standing against those who would rewrite the rules of the world to suit their own interests. This is the moment to decide what kind of world we want to live in, and what kind of future we want to leave behind. The question is, will we rise to meet the challenge? Or will we let the forces of tyranny reshape our world? Let's be clear, this is not a moment we can afford to let pass by. The world is watching us. Every decision we make, every action, or inaction, will reverberate far beyond this one conflict. History is being written in real time, and we are part of it. There is no neutral ground in this fight. We cannot, in good conscience, sit idly by and hope that someone else will step in, that the forces of democracy and freedom will win without our involvement. The moment to act is now. The Ukrainian people have shown us, day after day, what true bravery looks like. They have shown us that even in the face of overwhelming odds, even when the most powerful military on earth is bearing down on you, there is still something stronger than tanks and bombs. There is the unbreakable will of a people who refuse to surrender, a people who believe, with every fiber of their being, that their future is worth fighting for. They have shown us that courage isn't just for soldiers. It's for farmers, it's for teachers, it's for doctors, it's for every single person who stands up in whatever way they can to protect the life they've built and the country they love. So now the question is, how do we respond? What is our role in this moment? Because, make no mistake, this is not just a battle for Ukraine. This is a battle for the future of the world we live in. This is a fight between freedom and oppression, between the right of a nation to choose its own destiny and the forces that would strip that right away. If Ukraine falls, it won't just be Ukraine that loses. It will be all of us. This is about the global values we hold dear, the values of democracy, self-determination, and human dignity. And this is where we come in. We cannot afford to look away. Whether it's through sending humanitarian aid to those who are suffering, supporting military efforts that will help Ukraine defend itself, or simply raising our voices to remind the world that we will not stand by while freedom is trampled, we have a role to play. Each and every one of us does. This is not just a political question. It is a moral one. It is a question of who we are and what we stand for. If we stand by and do nothing, we are tacitly giving our approval to the forces of autocracy. If we stay silent, we are allowing oppression to flourish unchecked. We must stand with Ukraine. We must stand with their president, who has become a symbol of resistance, a beacon of what it means to fight for the future. We must stand with the people who are facing unimaginable hardship but refuse to bend, because their fight is not just for their land. It is for the world we want to live in. We must show them that they are not alone, that when they are standing up to protect their future, they are also standing for all of us. This is a defining moment. There is no middle ground. The world is watching. We cannot pretend that this conflict, this struggle, is someone else's problem. It is our problem. It is our fight. And the stakes could not be higher. If we let Ukraine fall, if we allow authoritarianism to win, it will embolden dictators and oppressors everywhere. The message will be loud and clear. Freedom can be taken, and there will be no consequences. That cannot be the message we send. When Ukraine wins, we all win. Because in that victory, it's not just the Ukrainian people who triumph. It's the values that make us who we are, the values of freedom, democracy, and human dignity. And if we stand with them now, we will all be able to look back and say that we did our part. We didn't stand by. We didn't sit on the sidelines. We chose the side of justice. And we fought together for a better world. Thank you.